Welcome everybody, thank you. Welcome back for those that haven't already been here, our administrators and everyone who already started school, but holidays are over. Happy New Year to everybody. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join. There. Moved. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, couple little changes. Once I get adjusted. Little snafu in the posting of the agenda for tonight with the town hall on Friday, so we're not going to be taking any official votes tonight. The main purpose of tonight's meeting was for the budget presentation anyway, so that is going to be our focus. So item 5.1, the consent agenda, we will not be voting on, and item 10.1, the approval or second read vote of the policy. So that will be put off to the next meeting. And also, before we start, we have a resignation from the Board of Education. Dear Chris and other Board of Education members, please accept this letter as my notice of resignation from my position as member on the Board of East Hampton Board of Education. My last day effective January 12th, 2020. It has been a pleasure working alongside all of the board members for the past 2 years. I was very proud to be part of a wonderful group of people. What I have learned is installed in me forever. Thank you again for the opportunity, Lori Caldwell. So, with that, sorry to see her go, but 4-year term is a long term for some. Goes by quick, but things happen, changes occur, so I totally understand her position and respect that. But with that, we have to now put into effect the policy we have on filling vacancies.
It's at everybody's place.
Should be on the paper there. So tomorrow, the superintendent will notify the town clerk and begin posting for the vacancy. At that point, we'll have a cutoff date of when interested parties can apply. And then interviews will be set up by this board to conduct and then fill that vacancy. If it is not filled within 30 days, the position then can be appointed by the town council. So, it's going to be busy on top of the budget. Yes. Any questions on that from anybody?
Will you give me the written?
Yes, I will turn that over to you. Yep. Okay. Also, before we start, we have lots of guests here this evening. First, welcome our town manager. First time here to our meeting, David Cox. Welcome. If you want to say any words, welcome. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Good. A couple town council members. I see Tim and Barbara. And several Board of Finances. Bob, Matt, Alana, Dr. Brown. Who am I missing? Anybody? No? Okay, good. Thank you all for being here. So we'll turn it over now, interboard liaisons. Anyone from the council? Any comments, thoughts? No? Board of Finance? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Shalansky, our labor union representative here.
Just want to let everyone know, just get a message out to our members to attend tonight's meeting, meeting on the 27th, to hear more about the budget that Paul's presenting over that items. Thank you.
Okay. And now we have our update from Director of Curriculum. Welcome back.
Thank you, thank you. This is a busy time for year of us going into the holiday break and right after. It's the mid-year point. And so we have been engaged in a number of data conversations around the district, really monitoring student progress. We're in our mid-year assessment window. We monitor student learning 3 times a year in a very intensive way, in addition to state assessments, to ensure appropriate growth for students. So teachers are administering those assessments, reviewing the results, and making decisions for next steps of instruction at this time. So that's a major focus for us right now, and that's on the heels of elementary school conferences in early December, so it really helps us to make sure that we're supporting all of our learners. Additionally, this time of year, we have our English learner assessment window coming up, so we'll be starting to prepare for that at the end of the month. And also, professional learning continues embedded throughout the day for our teachers, and whether we look at each of our buildings, we've had major initiatives launched this year, whether it's our phonics program at the primary level, our math workshop instructional model at the elementary level, Readers and Writers workshop at the middle school, and high school science. All of those teams are really focused and working collaboratively to ensure that those initiatives yield the results that we've been planning for, and we're really pleased with our progress in each of those areas. Additionally, we have some formal professional learning windows coming up in February and March, so the principals are starting to plan for how best to support teachers in that time frame and ensure that we're able to further that work. We've got components of the profile of the graduate that we'll be working on. The high school continues to move through their NEASC process, and we'll also be launching a formal district-wide curriculum institute so that we can move forward with some of our curriculum initiatives and articulation of that as well. So a lot on the plate for the next 6 weeks.
Okay. School updates. How's everyone doing?
So the high school continues to be a very busy place. Feels like break was so long ago. It really wasn't that long ago. Our students are getting ready for mid-year exams, which will begin on Tuesday. Also on Wednesday evening, our seniors that have taken capstone during first semester will present at the Capstone Expo from 5:30 to 7 in this very spot. We have our undefeated girls basketball team, which is still ongoing, and Mr. Warner's going to step out in a few minutes to check in on the game. And I think the best news I received about 11 o'clock this morning, Katie Tejan, our library media specialist, was just recognized, and we found out that she is the VFW State Teacher of the Year.
Wow.
Very nice.
Some great things going on.
Yeah, very nice.
Pardon me. So we have our band chorus concert this Wednesday at 6:30 here at the high school. I'm very excited about that. We're starting scheduling now, or we've been scheduling for quite some bit, but it is quite the lengthy process. So we're hopeful the budget goes well and we can maintain the schedule as is. Volleyball, we're planning a volleyball tournament with the Prevention Partnership in conjunction with our PTO. That'll be sometime in March. We'll have more info about that. And our bike club is blazing the trail in the back of the school and on the side of the school with about a little over, I think, a mile's worth of trail. And one of our students for the capstone project is going to be having our very first meet. So we're really excited about that. It's nice to see him, an 8th grader, working with our facilities director, John Harwood, myself, as well as Brian Holt from Airline Cycle. So it's really a full community, all different aspects, different stakeholders taking place. So, thank you.
At Center School, we had an assembly to welcome back our student population and set our sights on continued growth in 2020. Auditions for the Center School play Aladdin have concluded. Rehearsals are starting up right away, and that is in the April performance. 30-plus inventors are hard at work prepping for our invention convention that will take place on February 5th. Our salmon eggs were delivered last week by the Connecticut Salmon River Association. Mr. Moore and Ms. Sullivan's 4th grade classes will tend to the eggs and monitor the water conditions. 1 year after the installation of our rock walls in the gymnasium, we are looking for an official name, so we're having a name that wall contest for the students. That closes on Friday. I took a little peek at some of the names, and the students definitely come up with more creative names than I ever could, so we're looking forward to that. And we're wrapping up our mid-year benchmark assessments, and we look forward to all that there is to celebrate.
Good.
Anna Gonzalez and Team Memorial, we'd like to wish everybody a happy new year. We're excited to host our first family literacy night this Thursday. We have the children will cycle through 3 different activities between 5 and 6:30. There will be bingo for books, fireside reading, and some literacy center activities. So we're really excited about that. And special thanks to Abby Scarvellis and Jess Warner, our literacy specialists, for really organizing all of that. Today was our final pre-accreditation visit from Carol Glenn from Learn, as our Smart Start and preschool programs have to be accredited, NIAC accredited. So that's really exciting. We are in the queue for that on-site visit, which we will be given a 15-day notice, and they will come between that call that says we're on notice for 15 days through the end of May. So we don't know when they're coming, but again, special shout out to our preschool team and lots of people within the district for supporting the portfolio that's required for that accreditation. Our PTO is tireless in their efforts to support Memorial School and Center School, because it's East Hampton Elementary, K-5. Stop and Shop is doing their give back bags this month for our PTO. So anyone that has an opportunity to stop into Stop and Shop for one of those bags, they're giving $1 for each to East Hampton Elementary PTO. And that's it.
Any questions for any of the schools? Okay. We will continue. Audience of citizens. Any comments, questions, thoughts? You're all here for the budget. Okay. We are getting there. Go on to student reps. Update from you guys.
All right, so winter athletics, we're off to a great start. Currently, the girls basketball team has a current record of 7 wins and 0 losses, so they're undefeated. Boys basketball team has a record of 4 wins and 2 losses, and their 7th game is tonight, going on right now. Dylan Levesque of the co-op wrestling team with Portland has competed in several competitions, and he placed first at an invitational competition over winter break. And both the boys and girls indoor track teams have been successful. Collectively, the team placed 2nd in their most recent meet, and quite a few individual athletes continue to place in the top spots for their individual events at both meets.
And then as of school activities, Mr. Werner pretty much covered it, but we have the Senior Capstone Expo on the 22nd. And other than that, students are preparing for midterms next week, and everyone's looking forward to a fresh start in the 3rd quarter.
And those midterms coming up quick.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Personnel has not met. Nothing to update there. Policy curriculum.
We just met prior to this meeting, and will not be voting on anything later on in the agenda.
Okay. Finance, transportation, buildings, and grounds.
There was a meeting last week. We basically reviewed the capital items. Again, went through that, and Paul gave us a kind of a very brief view of what the budget was going to look like and some of the challenges in it.
Okay. Some of the challenges, I like that. Learn. Amy went to your first meeting.
Yes, it was lovely. It was very well attended. I think there was only 4 towns that weren't there. They were very happy with the participation.
Good.
I have the agenda and the minutes from the meeting previous, and also kind of an overview which they went over about what Learn is. So if any of the new board members want to look at that, I'm happy to share. 2 kind of big things that were brought up. Learn has lost their Birth to 3 grant. They are not going to be funded by the state this year.
Really?
So that may present an opportunity for us in our Birth to 3 program.
So starting next year, Learn will not be a provider for Birth to 3 as a referral like they have.
They are phasing out within the next 6 months, and they are hoping to offer those providers positions within the Learn Schools or kind of
Gotcha.
to fit in, but
Yeah.
within 6 months they will not be offering that
Wow.
service anymore. Yeah.
Okay.
The other big things, Goodwin College is now changing to Goodwin University.
Yeah.
And then the final thing, they are now dedicating 4 staff members for PR and communications and offering those services to their member schools. So that may be something that we want to talk to them about when we start developing our committee.
Okay. Thank you. And nothing with the building committee.
Just something that is pertinent to the building. We were informed by Chatham Health and the Department of Public Health that after 2 years of testing, 156 tests during that time, that we are able to use water.
No more bottled water.
No more bottled water.
Yes.
So it does require 2 years of clean tests. So
Yep.
we've got the required amount of testing so that Mr. Berger is going to send a note home to parents, and the bottled water that we have here will finish up, and then we'll be able to use all of the faucets, covers, and everything. In the meantime, for those of you that this sounds like an odd situation, there was a elevated level of copper in the water, which is not as concerning as lead, but it's still above the required amounts of copper in water. Our well water always tested perfectly, but between the well and where the water would come out, whether it was copper piping or not, nothing could really be determined as to whether it was the copper leaching from the new pipes. However, the building committee installed an orthophosphate system which coats pipes. We've had the required amount of clean testing. Throughout that process, we had bypassed the copper piping for the cafeteria and the 2 fountains by the gym, which were obviously all high-use areas. And we've been on bottled water for the rest of the school, and now we've been informed that the water is okay to use rather than providing bottled water.
Wow, that's big.
And obviously, all our schools get regular tests, so this doesn't mean we stop testing. We just go back to a regular schedule of testing.
Are there any other big items left on the building committee's agenda that you know of?
That probably is the last one that they were waiting for. So we anticipate the building being turned over to the Board of Ed. So you officially accept this building from the building committee, and then the town starts the closeout process with the state. It'll take another 2 years to close out the project. It's not a short process.
I know. Okay. All right. So here we are, superintendent's report and the budget presentation.
Thank you. If you did not get a copy, Mary is very willing to deliver a copy. She said yes ahead of time.
I would have done it, you know. You're doing PowerPoint, so I think I'm going to move over there. You wanna move with me?
Did you get any binder? Yes. Instead of that other system that wouldn't hold the pages in, we did get a new binder. We're leasing a new binder. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. I don't feel as bad because it's not 70 degrees like it was yesterday. So on a cool winter night, this is a good place to be. Just to start right off, our increase is a little bit larger than I presented to you last year. So the budget stands at 3.75, and I will be candid with you. We need 3.75% this year. This isn't me being optimistic and hoping I can add a lot of new things with a 3.75% budget. I am presenting to you the honest figure that I feel that we need at this point. And part of the reason, and you can follow along in the handout, I've given you a lot of information that you can read over a cup of coffee tomorrow. So the slides up here just have some of the general information. But after a couple of years, the columns on the left represent the 2018-19 budget, and then the column on the right, the 2019-20 budget. After years of a 1.5 that was elevated up to a 1.97, and last year a 1.75% increase, obviously cuts were made to get there, and there is just nothing left to cut. If you look in your handout quickly, and I won't spend a lot of time with this, but if you look on page 3 at the bottom left-hand corner, I've given you a sample of what our annual contractual obligations are. I'm trying to honor the town council budget philosophy, which says that, make the efforts to limit budget increases to meet contractual obligations. I've just picked out the big ones, and those alone require us to be at 4.31%. So flipping the books, we're over 4%. I've worked hard to get it down to 3.75%. But it's a challenge to come in at 3.5% when flipping the books you're already at 4.5 or so. The other things that I'm trying to follow along with the philosophy statement of the town council is to make sure that we maintain the quality and competitiveness of our students. And I feel like I've taken to heart this year. I am presenting what I feel is a budget of value to the community, but a budget of progress for our students. It's a value to me because 4.31 is required just to maintain exactly what we have, and I'm requesting 3.75%. But I'm trying to move us forward, and I feel like I've done it back to the value statement of all of the items that I'm going to be talking to you about tonight. We have taken and moved around staffing. We've taken out of curriculum writing money. We've re-allotted various accounts so that the items you're going to see, there is no increase for some of our progress moving forward. So I feel like I'm standing here saying I need 3.75%, but what I'm willing to do is not say that 3.75% includes hundreds of thousands of dollars of new programming. We're being selective in our programming, and we're getting new programming by moving priorities around. So everything I'm going to describe to you, is going to come in at around $0. Now, tonight I'm going to give you a very brief overview, and then at our next meeting, the principals will kind of narrate each of these with a little bit more detail. Board members, you'll be able to ask Karen some questions on the financial backup that she has provided you with. And so consider the 27th, a really active chance to let this material sink in, let Karen's material sink in, the comments of the principals on what I feel like, and I don't put any of the onus on them. I take the sole responsibility for presenting this budget to you so that you can make it your own over the next 4 meetings before we pass it on to the town on March 1. So when we ask people to offer input, and our traditional practices in November and December take the input of teachers and staff members and students and community members informally and through our budget process, our formal budget process, we broke down the categories into 4 areas. STEM, which we started last year, really trying to push our programs forward. World languages, because I feel like our students are at a complete disadvantage in world languages after we've cut out the 6th grade world language program. We also looked at enhancing instruction enrichment, and we're looking to enhance student support. So here's how we're doing it. You can follow along in your handout if you like. There's a little bit more detail than I'm going to give you. But keep in mind, everything I'm describing now is not money on top of the 3.75%. This is money that we've reallocated I don't show you, all I include here is the 0. But if you look at the comparable page, it will tell you how much the item is worth and where we're getting it from, which account I'm taking it from. So I'm kind of honoring that. Well, if you want something new, you've got to take it from somewhere else. And that's exactly what I'm doing with these things. One of the most serious things that I think we need to pay attention to is, you know, as I listen to what seniors are doing next year, over the last couple of years, I've heard a lot of students who have said, I want to major in engineering, or I'm going into engineering. And our kids are getting into pretty decent engineering programs. It wasn't until last year that we even added AP Physics for these students. So having a college level AP Physics class was essential. We added that last year. But for students interested in robotics, and you know, robotics is no longer just, you know, a fun elective. At the high school level, robotics is a pretty serious pre-engineering course. Our students are at a real disadvantage because we're having them use the same robotics equipment that would be appropriate for a 5th, 6th, 7th grade introduction to robotics, that Lego built robotics. Perfect for, you know, an introduction in the early middle school, but the high school, we really need to move to the standard that's used for competitive robotics leagues, etc. So in addition to obviously having the robotics equipment for the class, I really would like to see us start a robotics team at the school level here and at the middle school. This is not something innovative. We're way past other towns in having a competitive robotics team. In fact, this is a picture from a high school robotics class. Notice they're not using this equipment, they're using this little robotic built Lego machine, which can only do simple back and forth programs, and they're making this little, let's navigate the robot through a simulation of a little natural disaster site where this represents a hazard and these pieces of paper represent, this is something that would be if I told you this was a 4th or 5th grade picture, I'd be proud of what our students are doing. This is our high school robotics class. We should be embarrassed. I am embarrassed showing you this picture that this is what our high school students who are going to major in engineering, this is their exposure to robotics. It's just not acceptable. Here is our middle school students, and using, again, the Lego Robotics League. Very appropriate at the middle school level. However, we don't have any robotics team for them as well. They spend 1/4 of each year, grades 6, 7, and 8, being exposed to applied mathematics, pre-engineering, and robotics. But for those students that are really interested, we should be fostering that development in the middle school. Another area that we're moving to where we talk about supporting instruction and curriculum development is our math program. Thanks to the hard work of our teachers and Director of Curriculum Mary Clark, we've made a commitment to a math workshop in grades K and following that all the way up to grades 8. So the math workshop it's a hands-on, we make sure students understand mathematical concepts. It moves past just memorizing facts, though that is an important part of math, but it gets students understanding math. We're not providing them with the right manipulatives. So if you look in page 6, some of the programming that we do in math workshops, some of the items we're looking to buy, we will get those actually out of Title IV grant funds. But it's important that you realize that we're not using grant funds for some of the training. We're actually using it for some of the hands-on manipulatives, which really should just be part of our general budget. This is what math workshop looks like at the elementary level. What we'd like to do with K-3 is get in alignment with the math workshop is what's called Do the Math resources. It supports math intervention for those students that may struggle with math a little bit, but we just don't feel we have the sufficient math resources for intervention at the elementary school. While we have a two reading interventionists at the Memorial School, we really don't have a math interventionist. We have a K-5 math coordinator who does direct intervention, but is also in charge of all the curriculum advancement. So Memorial does not have a math intervention person, full-time. So we've got to make sure the teachers have the resources they need to have that happen in classes. And then the PTO has been supporting Reflex Math, which students access through their Chromebooks or at home 24/7. This is a great math support program. It's in the form of games. It helps students with fact fluency, and we've been piloting it for the last couple of years, but it's an instructional program that the school should be paying for and not the PTO. So those are just a couple of things. But we should be doing more with our STEM resources. This is our Makerspace Lab that we added last year. We committed to $10,000. We were going to get grant funded and PTO support for $5,000, and we were going to match it with $5,000. When the budget didn't pass last year, we cut out the $5,000, so we got half of what we wanted to. But these are 4th and 5th graders building Lego robotics. These aren't just Lego vehicles. These are programmed to move in different directions with assignments, coding on the computer. And this is a little introduction to circuit boards. I love seeing 4th and 5th graders do this, but we can only have one class of students work on this at a time. It's limited to when they can get in there, because we really only bought half of the materials that we had hoped to buy. As we move forward into world languages, not only do we need to reinstate world language in the 6th grade level, but we'd like to start introducing online options for students who are interested in things like Chinese, Mandarin. In fact, with proximity learning or VHS learning, we could open up other languages to students as well. I just used Chinese Mandarin because we could have 2 students, we could have 8 students, we could have 2 students doing German, we could have 2 students doing Russian, we could have 2 students doing Arabic. We just buy into the seats for this online learning, either through proximity or virtual high school. And I mentioned Chinese because Mr. Werner already has a student who has gone to him asking why we don't teach Chinese. But the important thing is to make sure that we restore our grade 6 world language teacher. We're doing this through a realignment of staff, but ultimately we are not able to offer any AP courses at the high school without the students having a serious non-introduction to world language, but an actual year 1 of world language. So the goal is to introduce students to world language in grade 6. 7 and 8, they would choose one language, French or Spanish, and then they're eligible for French 2 or Spanish 2 when they get to the high school, leading to the 5th year, which is AP. Now, we do have some students that take Spanish 2 and French 2 when they come to the high school, but what the high school has had to do is kind of make it a 2-, then a 3-. So even though we offer a 5th year of world language, it's not intensive enough to be an AP level. So students really need that French 1 or Spanish 1 coursework done in the middle school. Now, it doesn't preclude a student from changing and saying, you know, I did French 1, I want to switch to Spanish when I get to the high school. That is still a possibility. And for those students that, you know, it was a little too intense to master French 1 in 7th and 8th grade, they could just take French 1 as a Spanish. It just doesn't necessarily open up the possibility of AP Spanish or French in the senior year. If you flip ahead to page 8, you can see some of the instructional concerns that we have. We're making the case that we really would like to add a 4th grade teacher back. There's a lot of teachers that I would like to add back. We're currently 8 teachers down in the last 2 years, but our most crucial class is our current 3rd graders going into grade 4. We're trying to create slightly smaller classes of 20 students because they are a larger group of students with more needs than our typical class. So making the classes a little smaller certainly would help them. We've been piloting Foundations, we've been piloting Zaner Bloser spelling, and it's time to really push spelling and phonics. There were a couple years in this district where there really was not spelling and phonics. It was not done in a standardized program. We've kind of standardized the programming now, K1 and 2, and I think that's a huge leap forward. The teachers using the program have fallen in love with it. I know Mary will tell you all about the program and the success they're having with it in a couple of weeks. And then Spelling Connections in grade 4 and 5. We've been piloting it, and now it's time to just take the plunge and make sure K through 5 we have a solid spelling and phonics program. The Zaner Bloser Spelling Connections program also includes handwriting as well. Moving forward with online content, Newsella, for a fairly cheap price, provides nonfiction material for a number of subject areas, grades 2 through 8. So the teachers using the Chromebook, it certainly supplements the classes, gives students access to reading material at home. Because if we're going to make the Chromebooks work, especially in grades 4, 5, and 6, where they don't take them home, it'd be nice for students to be able to access the materials online as well. And then even though we don't, we're moving away from textbooks, AP requires that you either have hard copy textbooks or online textbooks for their classes. There's actually 4 AP classes that are using texts that are considered not acceptable for the AP exam. You can use them, but they're not the right books for the AP exam. I'm asking us to buy 2 of those 4 next year, the AP Biology and AP United States History. And then, we talked about middle school students and our need to make sure middle school students are safe, including and discovering their talents. And then we take our 2 no-cut sports, and as a result, we've, in essence, have made one now a regular cut sport, cheerleading or cross country, by virtue of 80 kids participating but only 2 coaches, and then us taking money out of supplies to bring the 3rd coach, and then leaving some of them home for meets, away meets. In essence, we've created 2 more cut sports. So our only 2 non-cut sports at the middle school were cheerleading and cross country, something that I think is really important. I love running. I would have been cut from the cross-country team when I was in 6th and 7th grade, which, to me, that's a travesty. And I understand because of soccer and basketball, you can't have 40 kids on the basketball court, but there are certain sports like cheerleading and cross-country that just are perfect for no limits to the number of kids. And when you consider, a school of 450 to have 80 kids involved in cross-country, I think it's outstanding. But instead of 50 cheerleaders, we cut it down to 25 this year, and that's unfortunate. Some of the other things that we're doing to save money, we've made a very strong commitment to youth mental health first aid. And I urge you, if you haven't paid attention in my updates, to read the information on page 11. Teens identify anxiety and depression as their #1 concern, and the other concerns are listed there. But coming from teens, anxiety and depression is their #1 concern. And when we look at our schools, K through 12, we are concerned with the mental health needs of our students. They're just becoming more complex. And we don't need to go into the reasons that the world is more complex, but for our students, the world is more complex. And our teachers are giving up weekends, and I completely applaud this, to get mental health first aid training. We're bringing in training for them at the end of June at no cost to the town. But this is something that I'm very proud of our teachers being involved in. Hartford Hospital does a 8-hour training session on mental health first aid. And I think it's very important. We have 25 teachers trained. Hopefully by the end of June, we'll have about 75 of our 300 staff members trained. And I'd love to see anybody that works directly with kids all day long be involved in that training. Which brings us to our next area of support for our students. We've made a commitment, and I applaud our special ed teachers. I applaud Rod Mosier, our special ed director, and he'll go into these next several pages in the handout with you in some detail in 2 weeks. Because I am looking to realign staffing to make sure that our special ed programs are staffed appropriately. Because we're in actually an enviable situation compared to other towns. First, we're doing what is ethically right by making sure our students don't jump automatically on 45-minute bus rides to some outplacement unless it's absolutely necessary. We're working hard to make sure that our students are educated in their hometown district with their peers, the same students they see on the soccer field on Saturday and when they do Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, they're seeing the same, they're being educated with those students in the schools. So when you look at this number here, this is the percentage of our East Hampton special education students who are currently outplaced. We've reached a point where it's about 2.5% of our students being outplaced. And you can see the difference for a number of reasons. But that's I say that because ethically and morally we should be proud as a community. But I'll also show you the financial savings as this. I asked Rod to do an exercise for us. This is the cost that we anticipate for next year. So when you look at our various in-house programs, this is our STEPS program, our ABA program for students with autism. This is our STARS program for students with strong emotional needs. This is our learning center for students in an alternative learning high school, currently housed at the Goff House. And this is our transition academy for students age 18 to 21 who we are still legally responsible to educate. So Rod knows every student who is in those programs, and I said, Rod, what if we outplaced all of those students, or these programs didn't exist for next year? Show me, go through and say, okay, based on this student's personality, I'd need to outplace him here, or this student would be outplaced here. Give me the cost differential, and you can see in every case what we anticipate educating our students in our district is always going to be well less than half the cost. So this is an upfront commitment to make sure we have things, appropriate programs for the students, but the amount of money that we are saving over years by creating these appropriate in-house programming and making sure that they stay as appropriate in-house programming seriously has put us at the forefront of best practice for students and families in Connecticut. Rod is getting calls, and we have a couple of tuition students because there's very few schools who have been able to create this level of opportunity in various programs for our students. In essence, it's about a $3 million difference. If people said, it's just too much having these students in our schools, let's just make it easy on all of us and outplace them, it's a $3 million difference. I mean, this programming is saving this community over the course of time $3 million roughly each year. If you're interested in the exact breakdown per school, Rod has kind of identified, this goes back to the first sheet, but what the program's saving for students in each school. Think of some questions for Rod, he'd be glad to answer just in a couple of weeks on this programming. So, people always say to me, Paul, what can we share between the town and the school to recognize savings? And, I firmly believe that, we could, jerry-rig a few things. However, the correct question is, what are you doing to partner with other school districts? Because what the DPW does and what our schools do is very different. But what East Haddam does is pretty similar to what we do. So we should be looking at shared services, and our district now has the strongest shared services model for towns in Connecticut. As you would expect, we're doing a lot of regional professional development with Learn. So instead of bringing in through grants a speaker that's going to charge us $10,000, we're sending people out to Learn. But here's the big money savers. We're overseeing East Hatham's food services program. So between Karen Aceta doing the financial accounting for them and our food services director overseeing their programming, we are not only overseeing the food program for East Hampton, we're overseeing the program for East Hatham. That is a huge cost savings for them, because we're billing part of her salary and part of Karen's salary against East Hatham. The Learning Center is another shared opportunity. That is a program that began here. 50% of the cost of that is covered by East Hatham because we give them 50% of the seats. So we oversee the program, and then they pay for 50% of the rent of the golf house, the electricity, anything that we're charged, the staff salaries, 50% is borne by East Hatham. Now, it's a program that's nice because we're running it with the appropriate number of students. Neither one of us could afford to do it separately on our own without the prices going way up, but we're at a really nice balance right now. The STARS program we are benefiting from students coming in from other towns who pay tuition, who offset the cost of that program. As we have seats open, if the program can handle with our staff 4 to 5 students, and we've got 3 students in the program, we should be making those seats available to other towns. The Transition Academy, we pay an agency to oversee our 18 to 21 program, and they give us discounts for any out-of-town student that comes to that. And then shared instructional improvement. This is nice for us in that our teachers are willing to go to New York City to get trained. There's a strong, the Readers Workshop comes right out of Columbia University of New York, and we're not bringing those experts up here. We're having our teachers go down on Saturdays and participate in that program. So, when people say, aren't there services you could share? We are doing a tremendous amount of sharing as appropriate. And I also feel like, as much as I'm telling you that, a 3.75 is what we need after a couple of years of under 2, we're still giving a nice return on investment. When you look at the new schools that we're adding, and I applaud the high school. They're willing to say, okay, some of our algebra courses may be a little higher, so we can continue to offer AP Calculus and AP Statistics. But we're also making room, like I said, for AP Physics. We added AP Music Theory last year. We've added theater arts electives at the high school, and we also added a UConn-bearing credit course, Human Development. Our Readers and Writers Math Workshop that I've been talking to you about, we've reached the point where schools that we went to visit now are going to start asking us to come and visit. Based on conversations that we've had, they're so excited about what we're doing after we went and see them. They now figure we're ahead of them and they'd like to come and see what we're doing at. We've made the commitment to STEM. You saw the pictures of 4th and 5th graders with little circuit boards and the little Lego robotic cars, and our coding at the middle school. But we need to keep pushing this. I'm proud of where the programming is, but we need to keep pushing that. We've become recognized throughout New England for our profile of the graduate. I'm not going to go into great details. If you've read my update, you see us constantly bragging about how we're pushing the profile of the graduate. If you read any of the weekly newsletters from the principals, each week they highlight what students are doing in their buildings on this. I'm tremendously proud of our investment in AP courses. So if you look at the statistics that I gave you on page 17, out of the 23 towns in our district reference group, East Hampton had the 3rd highest success rate on the AP exams. So students take the exam, you score a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. You need a score of 3, 4, or 5 for passing. And the colleges either accept credit, or they just accept it as the title, advanced placement. So if you take advanced placement English and you pass it, you know, a college may say to you, okay, you don't need to take freshman English, you can go right into the next elective. Sometimes they'll give you credit for it. But regardless, our students are having tremendous success there. However, I'd be much happier to tell you that we added AP courses and so many kids are taking it, exposing themselves to our most challenging courses and our most rigorous courses that, you know, due to the number of kids and seats we've made available in AP, that our scores have gone down a little. I would much rather stand here and say, hey, our students, so many kids are taking it, yeah, that it's causing our scores to go down, but they're exposing themselves to what's considered a college level course. Even so, last year, 97 students took 156 exams. I'd love to see 156 students take 300 exams. So that's still an area of, it's an area of growth, but it's certainly an area of success for us. And then I really feel like we are educating the whole child. We've made it, the cornerstone of this district is compassion in our schools, in our classrooms, from our teachers, from the community. And you know, that has got us recognition between the profile of the graduate and the educating the whole child. You know, I really feel like the compliment given to us as an exemplar of 21st century learning, we're gonna wear that badge proudly. For those of you that like the numbers that I do each year, I've given you over the next several pages the per pupil expenditure. Each year I use these same exact towns. These are towns that are not part of regional school districts. They all have their own high school, and they're fairly close to us. The 2018-19 per pupil expenditure, which is from last year, $16,204. The average in the state is $16,900, so we're just about $700 out of where the state average is. Say we were even like just an extra 500 per kid. With 2,000 students, that's an extra $1 million to have. Now, I'm certainly not asking for that, but we're certainly not at the top level of per pupil expenditure. We are, however, at the top level of the median income. So with the same exact towns, our town ranks 4th in median income and 16th in per pupil expenditure. That's down one slot from last year. We were 15th and we are down to 16th. For those that like to compare to the state assigned group, district reference group D, our per pupil expenditure, thank you, is 15th out of this list, and once again our median income is second. That's also a drop of one place from last year. Our enrollment is consistent where it was about 5 years ago. We had a little increase that is kind of working itself out. Over the last couple of years, we have had 2 smaller kindergarten classes come in. So instead of about 140 kindergarteners, we're down to about 120, and this year about 115. So we've seen 2 smaller classes come in closer to this level back in the 14-15. So either this was a bump up and we're going to go back to the levels here. I don't know, we still need a couple more years of data. What we're finding is students are coming back from some of the magnet schools. We don't have the number of magnet schools, but we do have 2 smaller classes moving through the currently in K and 1. It'll be interesting to see what happens with next year's kindergarten. For those of you that are disappointed that some of the items that were requested by the buildings or in an informal process by students or teachers or parents, I've given you on pages 23, 24, 25, everything that was requested and the cost, and then just to the right of the cost, the budget increase that it would amount. So when Mr. Werner says, gee, Paul, I'd really like, a math teacher that we cut 2 years ago, we're down to 5 math teachers. We could really use 6 math teachers again. That's a $75,000. We anticipate about $76,000 for salary and benefits. That would be a 0.24 increase to the budget. So you can see adding any of these items, our budget tick goes up just a little bit. But this is the board's exercise over the next couple of weeks to look at what is the superintendent's recommendation, and then make some decisions as to what you'd like to substitute or add in, etc. Keep in mind you're already at 3.75%, but with a rate of inflation of roughly 2.1%, that is not a huge increase. If you were at our presentation on the state of the schools, this is something that we talked about. We talked about getting ready for 2030. I know we just hit 2020, but we can't wait till 2030 to get ready for 2030. These students are in 2nd grade right now. They're moving through our system. They're going to be in central school in 2 years. They're going to be in the high school before you know it. So we need to start preparing for 2030. There's going to be a divide in education. Towns that can keep up with the demands of just new challenges, new careers, new technologies. Can you keep up with it, or are your kids going to fall behind? Let me tell you what I'm most proud of. This is a picture from our new forensics class. So our science department said, okay, even though we're down a teacher, we'll create a couple of larger sections, or we'll eliminate one of the electives. Let's start the forensics class. And the reason forensics, I'm proud of forensics, is it's not an AP class. It's for those kids that don't want AP science, but are still interested in science and maybe interested in as a career. It suits the new next generation science standards perfectly because you do science. You're applying critical thinking, creative thinking. This is a blood spatter exercise. No real blood was used in the making of this exercise. But looking at the blood spatter and determining more of our classes throughout the district should resemble this class. Our favorite quote as we were putting our State of the Schools presentation together is, learning is experience, everything else is just information. There is no value in information because you can Google it faster than you can remember it. And yes, there's certain things kids have to know, but I love that Tony Wagner quote that it's what you can do with what you know that matters. We've got to start providing experiences for our students. I'm not asking for a new forensics textbook. They don't have a textbook, but this is what they're doing in class. To me, this is much more important than handing them a text and giving them a quiz on what's involved. But courses like this are in jeopardy. We're going to have one of our larger classes moving through from the middle school, and Mr. Verner is going to need to make a decision. We're going to run freshman classes, sophomore classes that are a little higher in number, so we can squeeze in a forensics class or not. A lot of people, because I'm willing to sit down with anybody. There's not only a divide in education, there's a divide in thoughts of education. And, a lot of people are out there saying, but when I was in school, this is what we did. So, the world that our kids are graduating into in 2030 is going to be very different. So we can't look and say, I had a class of 30 and I turned out just fine. We have classes of 30, but they're not meeting the kids, they're not meeting the needs of kids right now, and it's not appropriate for the world that they're going to face when they graduate. So we have to stop using that sentence, yeah, but when I went to school, I had 28 kids, I didn't have a computer, and look at me, I'm doing everything I want to do. So, once again, next 2 weeks from now, you'll hear some details from Karen, from Rod, from the principals. Board members, if you have any questions that you think is going to require some research, give them to me so we can come prepared to the meeting with answers for you, rather than popping those questions on us. I don't want to give you wrong information. So if something is going to require research, give us a couple days to look it up. and we'll be glad to answer your questions. Once again, I'm willing to drive to meet people anywhere they want to meet. I'll make you coffee at 94 Main Street, or I'll meet you at Echo Coffee Shop and buy you a nice hand brewed cup of coffee if you don't like the Keurig.
The coffee bean is there,
yeah. So Chris, I think you were going to open it for public comment.
Yeah,
or-
a couple things. So let's just review. Don't you go anywhere. Why don't you stay there? Because I'm not done with you. So for the board, we have January 27th, February 10th, and then February 24th. So what's going to happen is, over those next 3 meetings, this board will go back and forth over this recommendation you just heard from Paul, and then the details from Mary and the principals that we'll be hearing. And looking at that list of didn't make it in the budget, is there something that we as a board want to put in, want to take out? We can adjust it over these next 3 meetings. On February 27th, we do need to vote on our final budget to turn into the town by March 1st. That's our deadline. So as Paul said, if you have any questions, more information on something, if you email them, sooner the better. So that way we can get the answers and keep it moving. I do want to open it up to questions. I think we'll focus it though. Paul did an overview of the whole budget. As he said, we're going to be hearing from the schools, the principals, and from Rodney and from Mary. So if you have a specific question for one of those, maybe we should wait until we hear from those individuals. So tonight, let's just focus our questions on what Paul presented, what he can answer. So with that, I do want to comment though, on page 12, I do want to commend greatly, but I didn't realize these numbers were this way, the special education, between Rodney and staff and everyone involved. From 15 years ago, to go 19.5% of our students outplacement down to 2.5%, I think is huge, unbelievable. So I want to thank you for that. I think you're a big part of that. And my last comment or question for Paul, right on the cover, when you talk about the 3.75, so contractually, looking with what you presented and contractual obligations, it would have been the 4.31, 1,344,000.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, those are our biggest obligations. Now, you know, you might not consider toilet paper and Kleenex,
No, but
2,000 students in 4 buildings.
those are contracts you have with
Right.
suppliers. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay, board members, any specific questions or comments for Paul? And then I'd like to open it up, but anyone, board members? Amy? Okay.
How many of the 8 teaching positions that we've lost over the last 2 years are reinstated in this budget that's presented tonight?
Yeah, so if you turn to page 2 and you see in red the current positions that were eliminated, what this does is it reinstates one of those positions, but by moving other staff around and by anticipated retirements. So if you look at an anticipated retirement, if 2 teachers at top step, the ones typically who are going to retire, I can replace those 2 at, you know, a fairly low cost, but I can also add 1 more. So it's almost 3 for the price of 2. And typically that's how we'll get a couple of the positions. There's also because we have the 2 smaller classes at Memorial School moving through, as they move up, I need 1 less teacher in those grade levels. And, you know, that may provide one of the special ed positions or things like that. So it doesn't reinstate the number, but it does reinstate the position. So I'm restoring world language, but I'm not adding any teachers to this unless it's through the retirement. So there may be 2 additional that come on based on anticipating up to 4 retirements or resignations, that would provide 2 new teachers at roughly the same cost of the 4 going out.
Okay. That helps. Amanda, I'm sorry. Amanda had her hand.
I'm sorry. I just, when you look at this slide with cost savings with special ed outplacements, I know it's much less expensive when you're talking about students that go out to magnet schools, things like that. But there is a cost to us when students choose, is there not?
Yeah, so for example, if a student chooses a magnet school, it's not the tuition of what a special ed outplacement would be. The tuition is less. However, if a student chooses a magnet school, we're still responsible for all special ed costs associated with that student. If that student needs any speech services or PT or OT or any counseling services or a one-to-one parent, those costs come back on the district.
Well, my thinking isn't like if it's a special ed student who is choosing a magnet school, but I'm saying there's a cost savings that we're realizing by providing appropriate programming for special ed students here instead of having to outplace them.
Correct.
Now, something like a parent choosing a magnet school for their child wouldn't be because of special ed needs necessarily, but they feel like we're not providing appropriate programming. And I'm just wondering, we are, if we're providing some of the, I'm just thinking it has to be, if we're making cuts and we're having really big classes and we're not providing, as we've been having to do the last few years, are we, if families were choosing then to either send their kids out or maybe move away, and that affects property values, I mean, at some point, it's kind of a penny wise, pound foolish kind of a thing. Am I? That is what I'm thinking.
Well, let me present the scenario, and Ron will speak more of this next week. I'll give him some time to give you some statistics. If a parent's not happy with their son's programming or daughter's programming in the school, they don't have to look at a magnet placement. They can say, it's the school district's responsibility to place my child in an appropriate setting.
I'm not talking special ed. I'm
Okay.
saying.
So you're saying, so if the school doesn't provide opportunities and classes
Yeah,
and
for regular ed
curriculum,
kids.
and
Sure.
they choose to send their child to a magnet school,
Yeah.
the town is
I'm
losing.
saying we need to be supporting.
Right, because we do
this
pay.
is wonderful.
Right, we do pay, right, and this doesn't have to do with, this isn't the percentage of students, this is the percentage of special ed students.
Yeah, I get it.
So, I mean, as a superintendent of schools, I'm gonna stand here and say, I hope that no family has to feel like they've gotta go to a magnet school, because they don't feel the education that we're offering is the best possible education for their children.
When we do things like offer some of the theater classes or the music
Sure.
classes that we've been offering, we are more likely to keep students from looking elsewhere. And that
Students look at magnet schools for the specific offerings of
Yes.
magnet schools. So if we can offer a strong visual arts, music program, theater program, that student doesn't need to go to the learning corridor for the arts magnet. If we can offer, a robotics team and AP physics and, keep up AP calculus and AP statistics, students aren't going to need to go to, the pre-engineering matters.
And we do also, in a similar way, it is a cost savings. It's not because it's not, special ed is a huge cost savings because the programming is so specialized. But even with some of these other programming, like the STEM and the theater, that's still an expense for us.
To send.
Correct?
Yes.
Present to us,
Yeah.
yes. Yep. Jim, you had a question?
Paul, just a general question on a redistribution of curriculum funds. If you're adding $5,000, let's say, to an online world language program, is that $5,000 being taken from somewhere else?
Yes.
Just to make the question.
Yeah, so when we got the NEASC report, one of the criticisms of this high school is they feel like the curriculum is out of date. and I am taking funds that we should be writing curriculum with, and I'm doing the basics first. I don't feel like I can write a good curriculum if we're not offering the classes that we should be offering. So we're putting the appropriate classes ahead of us writing the curriculum for them.
And what is that leaving in the curriculum account? Because I know that was sort of thin to begin with. But
Mary will give you a sense of what I've left her. It's not too much for writing. It'll be short.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Could you just refresh my memory on the foundations and spelling connections, those costs, Newsella as well? Annual costs, startup costs, what?
Yeah, Newsella is an annual subscription. Foundations is it's a one-time bigger purchase with some consumables. The Spelling Connections is more of an annual cost because it's just the consumables are more expensive.
But there's some cost, as we move to foundations, we're not reinvesting at the primary level in Spelling Connections. So foundations is an initial startup cost, and then so they'll incur those cost avoidances by making that investment in foundations, which has a minimal annual renewal kind of fees associated with it.
Board members, anyone else? Jeff? Mark? Martha? Okay, so at this point we'll open it up. Audience, again, we'll keep it directed towards Paul as we've been doing without getting into the school level details. And go Dr. Burke.
I have several questions, but I'll make them quick.
Okay.
Everybody knows you don't go shopping without knowing how much money is in your wallet. Have you made any projections for the ECS grant?
Yeah, sure. The ECS grant, the state published what was last year's, this year's, the foreseeable future. We're anticipating about $100,000 less to the town.
Okay, thank you. The page 6, math grants. I'm always interested in finding out when these grants end, when do they terminate, because usually the town is on the hook after that. Do you have any projections?
Yeah, for the Title IV federal funds, it's a renewable grant every 2 years. But what we're purchasing is resources they're not one-year resources. They would be, once we have them, we have them.
Okay. How many students are currently in AP Physics and Music Theory?
I can get those numbers for you, unless you have them roughly.
1 minute.
Okay. Let me go on to the next question when you look those up if you don't mind. Am I hearing you correctly in saying that labs are non-existent except in AP courses?
Yeah, so when we reduce the amount of when we reduce the amount of science teachers in order to make sure we could offer as many sections as possible, the double lab period was eliminated. It doesn't mean they're not doing labs, but they don't have that extended time for, ultimately what you have to set up for, etc.
I don't understand. Could you?
So typically, if a course met on our old schedule, it would meet 5 days a week. But 1 day a week, they'd have a double period. So they would meet for the 45, 50 minutes, and then they would have an additional 45, 50 minutes. So there would be, in essence, 6 meetings during the 5 days, but back to back, so you could do an extended lab.
Okay.
Now, it's not that they're not doing labs, we just don't have the extended time, because every extra period is, I've got to account for that for a teaching period for a teacher. So I can have teachers teach the equivalent of 25 periods per week.
So they're having abbreviated labs, they're not having back-to-back periods?
They're not having what I would call extended double period labs.
Okay.
Except for AP biology and AP chemistry.
Okay.
Physics.
Physics as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, roughly, number 7 and 8.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I just want to clarify, so when you're not having the labs, that's because this is a fallout from cutting teaching positions.
Right, so for example, if I'm a teacher, I'm teaching 25 periods per week. If I teach 5 sections, then that's 5 roughly per day. This isn't exactly how the course works, but the schedule works, but I'll give you the elementary view of it. So if I have a teacher teach lab periods, now they're teaching 1 less course. It's a nice investment in the labs, but I'm at the point where I need the courses because we're down 1 science teacher. Anyone? Yes.
Just a question, was there any thought, because I didn't see it in here, about reinstating Chromebooks for our 6th graders?
The Chromebooks right now are part of the capital plan. Our first capital meeting is tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you to Paul. I've lived here since 2005, and he by far is the best superintendent we've ever had here. Since he stepped into this district, he has given the most honest, clear budgets that we've ever seen. This is an amazing budget at 3.75, but honestly, I still feel we're kicking the can down the road because of the last 2 years and the ridiculous cuts to the Board of Education budget. I personally would like to see the Board of Ed put forth a budget and what it truly would cost to put us back where we are, because we all know from the past 3 years' experience that if we put 3.75 forward, we're not going to get that. They're just going to be cuts, and then we're going to just keep kicking the can down the road. I have a 6th grader who doesn't have a Chromebook and who doesn't have a foreign language this year. As somebody that's been paying taxes since 2005, it pisses me off. I'm really sorry, but we're losing people in this town because of kicking the can down the road. And we've been doing it not just in the Board of Ed and as far as with teachers, but with everything. The boys are in summer school. Come on, we could have fixed that thing 12 years ago. Instead, we kept putting a Band-Aid on it until it was a gushing, gaping heart attack that you couldn't fix. And now you've spent what you could have spent on it 12 years ago. Instead, now we're spending double because we didn't want to fix it. So, Paul, I applaud you. This is another very honest, clear, detailed budget. You're always open when I have questions. I email you. You always get back to me. And I'd just like to say thank you for continuing to do that.
Well, and something just so everybody in the room understands, and Dr. Brown asks a very fair question about the education cost share from the state. And through no fault of the town or no fault of the school, what the state is giving us, we used to get 7.1 million, now it's down to 6 whatever million, and the last couple of years, it's going down by 100,000. But that's, the town has to say, okay, the state's not giving us that money, but our needs don't change in education. So, do you say, okay, we've got to find that 100,000, or do we just accept that as a cut off the top? That's a rhetorical question. Not looking for anyone to answer that at this moment, but that's a valid point. The state is not doing us any favors at this point.
And one more, so somebody said this is amazing that we dropped this. Now this just says what we used to outplace versus what we're serving now in district, the percentage-wise. I'd love to know what you spent on special education costs in 05-06 versus the number of special education students you have today and the cost. Because back in 05-06, we did not have a quarter of the special education kids that we have today. And so the budget is dramatically different now.
Yeah, so everything was cheaper in 05-06, as you know. But what I don't have on this chart that would probably help is the number of special ed students in the state. The identification rate is going up. Our rate is going up. So as this number goes down, the number of special ed students is going up, which kind of even makes this a little bit more remarkable. I mean, if it was just straight across, I'd still be impressed because our numbers are going up and we weren't placing more, but Rod is able to create these programs where it's going down. And I think I give you the statistics of the percentage of students on page 15. If you look at the bottom, 12% of our students identified as special ed students. And that's special ed for a number of reasons. The state has a wide variety of identifications, but you can see Colchester's is 16.5. The state average is 15%. So it's not, we are not over-identifying students. If you had a number of 20%, we'd say, well, something's wrong, we seem to be over-identifying students. We are certainly not over-identifying students.
Anyone else? Comments, questions?
With industrial certificate in their hand, so they can go right to work for the program.
Yeah, you know, and we talked heavily about this last year with the manufacturing and that manufacturing pipeline. For the current existing manufacturing pipeline in Eastern Connecticut, we are one town over. We do not qualify as a partner. Middletown is working with Middlesex Community College to develop a manufacturing program so our students could take courses here and at Middlesex, or we're even looking at a possible partnership with Vinyl Tech, where even our students who don't go to Vinyl Tech could do part of their day at Vinyl Tech and come out with some sort of certificate so they could work for, you know, any of the big manufacturing corporations in Connecticut. But we don't have a certificate yet that we're putting in kids' hands. This part of this little Middlesex is a little bit slower than Eastern Connecticut in developing that. But they had a very strong...
Do we have classes that are heading kids in that direction?
Well, it would require classes like physics, depending on what you want to do. But so what we're trying to do is create a partnership either with Middlesex Community College or Vinyl Tech, so the kids would be here part day and they would take those courses there. That's how it's done in Eastern Connecticut. A lot of the students either in Three Rivers in Norwich, the community college, or Quinnebog Valley Community College. They're partially enrolled in their high school and there, and they get their certificate to go out and work right for EB.
So you're working on some kind of...
We're at the ground level. There's nothing to be part of yet, but we've had communications with, I've had communications with the director of the state technical school program. He knows that we're interested in partnering with him and Vinyl Tech to have our students not just go to Vinyl Tech full time, but to be enrolled here and courses at Vinyl Tech, and also working with Middlesex Community College. But it's, you know, it's not just a, you know, we create the certificate. It's just taking longer to develop than I would like to see, to be honest.
I do have one other comment. I'm sorry the woman here left. On the boiler, Board of Finance did approve repair of that boiler many years ago, and then a few years later, the town council found a better way to repair it and saved really a lot of money, probably $800,000. So just to set that straight.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions? Yes.
Just curious, were we going to talk about the curriculum funding?
Could you speak up a little bit? Sorry, Ty.
Sorry, curriculum funding, were we going to talk further about that?
I was going to give Mary in 2 weeks just a chance to go through the impact my suggestion is having on the ability to write curriculum. You know, we're in the process where she's going to give you a very exciting news that we're revamping our format for curriculum, and I'm dipping into a little bit of the funding she would like to have to provide some of these.
Yes.
Just I don't know, maybe a thought or something, but the speaker who shared about her daughter, have we ever thought about sharing where we should be in 2020 to 2021 school year? Not a whole budget like this, but something where we should be to compare it to what you're actually asking. Like, I'm wondering if that's something, because I don't think, you know, we kick the can every single year, and we're kind of getting deeper in a hole every single year. But if we weren't kicking the can for the past 5 years, where would we be now, and where are we in reality now? I think that'd be kind of interesting to see that difference, and not just even with the Board of Ed, I think with our other boards as well. You know, like when I vote, because I live in this town, I vote for everything. I don't even say yes to the dress, I say yes to East Hampton. But I would love to see that comparison to like, where should we really be if we were doing what we should do for the past 5-7 years in all aspects of our town. I mean, have we ever thought about, I don't know how much work that would be for you guys, and I'm not volunteering myself.
No, if you took pages 23, 4, and 5, stuff that was removed from this proposal.
I mean, it's just adding all that back.
And where would it put us? Yeah.
But I don't think that that necessarily may definitively answer the question, because
And I'm not saying like add things to make, you know, like if we just stick with the meat of what we really could have been doing for our education, for our students, for our town, where would we be?
yeah, I think the problem with, I understand what you're saying, Joanne, but the problem with where you should be, that's not really an objective place.
Yeah.
You know,
It's just like
I mean, because
educate people
we could
where what we're losing.
we could take all the suggestions that are in here
Yeah.
and probably add another 100
Yeah.
if we really wanted
Yeah.
to. I mean, because there's many different things that we don't have that we potentially could have. You know, Alana's point about the industry, you know, opportunities for students that would then keep them from wanting to go to Final Tech. You get into that whole avenue.
Yeah.
It just, I mean, I'm not sure how I understand the question, and I think there's value in thinking about it, but I'm not sure how you quantify what that should be level is, because it's going to constantly be variable.
And one would impact the rest. I mean, if you could easily sum up how much was cut from every year's budget, but what was cut from 2 years ago impacted the following year, right? So, and how do you really quantify that? It gets tricky.
And I guess that's part of the message I would like people to see is that the impact that it doesn't just happen that 1 year, but the years after that too. We focus always on that 1 year, but we gotta think down the road.
Other comments, questions from anyone? Yes. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a quick comment on the bottom of page 21, and this just shows the dedication of our teachers, right? That they just renewed their contract, and they're the second lowest in the state. They took a step freeze in year 1, and the extension of the steps at the entry level. So, I don't know, as a parent, I just want to thank the teachers for doing what they need to do, and they're the second, but like that just doesn't make sense to me, considering what they're giving to us. So they're really working hard, and they really, I think, sacrificed a lot in the last contract negotiation. So that's just my comment. Second lowest increase, sorry. It's still the second lowest increase for teachers who give a phenomenal amount to our kiddos.
Anything else?
That's not true. That is actually not
They're not
true.
second
They
highest
are
in
not
the
the
state.
second highest paid in the state.
They're not the second in the state.
Yeah,
Maybe in the third, but not the state. Not-
our entry level.
It's not true.
Yeah, there's some misinformation, but we'll clear that up.
Any other questions or comments on this? Yes.
I'd just like to put a plug in for the AP physics class. My daughter's in it, and she's very challenged by it. She's doesn't easily get challenged by math and science, but she's very challenged by the scores, and she loves it. And she has told me that AP Physics and AP Bio do have overlaps in the schedule. She wanted to take both, but she couldn't. And AP Bio is just well known in school, and a lot of kids take it. And she thinks that might be, the schedule challenge was a problem this year. But she thinks it should, and she's going into engineering, and she's going to be going into mechanical engineering.
Thank you. Any other final comments or questions? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Saga continues January 27th. It's the second, and we will move on. Okay, it's after that. It's just that. All right, so we're going to continue with the agenda. Update from Capital. Oh, let me just call him out.
Just at your, I think we emailed the capital
Yes,
requests
yep.
to people, and I know the first meeting is Wednesday at 9 o'clock. Mark is the official representative. However, meetings are open to the public if you would like to attend. The agenda speaks to more of looking at facilities this time and the baseball field, but perhaps there will be some discussion on individual requests. But Don and Rich will be there just in case.
And the meeting's here?
Pardon me?
And the meeting's
The
here?
meeting is at the town hall at 9 a.m.
Wednesday. Mark, anything you want to add into that capital topic?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. All right, enrollment update.
Enrollment is at your places.
Yep. No presentations. Before we move on, any board questions so far? Enrollment, capital, anything? All right, then we are looking, any new business? Anyone need anything, future business put on the agendas coming up?
Yes, I was wondering if it was possible to set up a tour for the Board of Education of the new town hall spaces, specifically the Board of Education. I mean, it would be nice to see it all, but.
Yep.
I'll work with Mr. Cox and we'll arrange for a board ed tour at his convenience.
We'll get you one.
Thank you.
At a time when you don't necessarily need to wear hard hats.
Yeah.
So we can arrange that.
That's okay.
We'll get it after hours.
Actually, I will put you on the spot, Mr. Cox, since we brought that up. Any updates on timing? March still looking like the good date?
So right now the contractor is telling us that around March 1, I'll say, is when they should finish their work on the building and be ready to give it back to us and put it in our possession. After that, we'll begin to do installation of new furniture and finish installation of what technology equipment is new to this space that isn't already in use somewhere else. Right now, the goal is around an Easter weekend move for all of us into the new facility with an opening that Monday or so thereafter.
Nice.
That's what I know right now. Everybody cross your fingers that all the contractors get their stuff done, and then we've got about 5 or 6 weeks to do our work.
Nice.
Before we all get in.
Thank you. Audience of citizens. Any other comments, thoughts from anybody? Hearing none. Now Bob almost had his hand as a, no, okay. And we have the calendar, lots of things coming up. I know the schools have a lot of things coming up. Always trying to get to as many of those as possible. Great to see you. And with that, have a good night. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.